I want to take you back to 6 months ago, before AI ate the world. This is a panel on hybrid as the new normal, and my prediction is that, including with AI, hybrid will continue to be the new normal, although the panelists will see if they agree with that, in all kinds of ways long into the future. It is ultimately a modality, right? It's a way of delivering education, and so you need to come back to the core of what you're actually delivering. But the modality we all learn painfully matters a great deal, and that's what this panel is. I'm Noah Pickus. I come from Duke University. My 5-second commercial will be that I have a new book coming out called The New Global Universities, which amongst others features Minerva University as a case study of what it means to start a new university in the 20th century. We're going to run through, if we're lucky, 3 or 4 questions here today. Please come on in. We want to talk about, what does it mean? What is hybrid? How do you define it? What are the drivers for it? The pedagogical drivers, the business drivers. What is the experience of our panelists in the opportunities that they see and the risks? Where can this go wrong? And all of them have had experience with actually implementing hybrid, and not only under pandemic conditions. And so we want to talk about the implementation and the lessons learned. So we'll see where that journey takes us, and we'll let each panelist, they'll weave in the parts of their company or their biography as need be. So we'll start, and because they've set us up this way on the stage, and I see it on the screen here, James, why don't we start with you? And can you just give us, hybrid is this word that appeared suddenly. How do you define it? What does it mean to talk about hybrid?
Sure, thanks, Noah. So first of all, I'm James Genone. I'm the Vice President of Academic Solutions and Innovation at Minerva Project. And I'm grateful to the organizers and also to Noah for this session. I think it's a really important topic. Wrote a white paper on this topic that came out a couple of months ago. And my background is as an academic. I was a professor for a number of years and worked both at Minerva University, the university that we founded, and at Minerva Project with many, many of our partners on programs that have been hybrid from their inception. And this is now work going back over 8-10 years. And for me, I was thinking about your setup, Noah, mentioning AI. At its broadest, hybrid is really about the intentional integration of technology into education. And we focus a lot on modality, is it online or offline? But what online versus offline is about is how are we using technology to facilitate the educational experience for learners. And so I think when we think about it in that broad way, then it gets us really very quickly to what we're trying to create. What kinds of learning experiences are we trying to create? What are the goals of those experiences for learners? And how can we make decisions about technology and about learning modality that are driven by that? So we spent a lot of time breaking down the way the terminology is used because people use it in very different ways. A lot of people are interested in hybrid in a modality that involves some learners being remote and some being in person. Sometimes that gets called high flex. That's very, very different from a hybrid course where it meets some days of the week online and other days of the week in person. It's also very, very different from a program which has some online courses and some in-person courses. So those are all very important distinctions. I think the key to all of these definitions, however you use them, is approaching them really intentionally and then being very, very consistent and thoughtful about how you employ those different kinds of learning experiences based on the needs of the learners that you work with.
James, thanks. And I should have mentioned that our panel is equally divided between higher education and K-12, so we get to cover the gamut here. Felix, you're based in Vienna. Where do you come into? Would you add to James's definition or give it more specificity?
Yeah, so in our case, at GoStudent, we run one of the largest tutoring, K-12 tutoring companies for children in the age of 6 to 18. So we connect them to world-class teachers, provide the tutoring lessons and support them. We started out as a pure online player, delivering all these sessions in a one-on-one online format. And about 1 year ago, we also acquired a business that runs physical tutoring centers across Germany and Austria, about 1,000 in total, like Sylvan Learning that you might know here in the US or Mathnasium. And for us in our context, what hybrid means is that we are able to provide additional formats to the children. Because every child learns differently. Some children, they actually like to go to a physical classroom and interact also with other kids. It gives them motivation. Like, I don't know, when you go to there are people who need to go to the fitness center to get motivation and seeing other people who are also working out. And other people can just do the exercises at home in front of their screen or just very alone. We see the same pattern also with kids in that age group. Some kids like to do it purely online. They like the flexibility. Some kids like to do it in a physical setting, in a group. Some other kids like to combine it. This is on the definition that James mentioned on this high flexibility model. They do maybe one session at the center, the next session they do online. So by providing additional formats, providing additional value to the families, to the kids, this is in our business context what we today define as hybrid. In the future, we see it much more interacted, where also the offline sessions, they get accelerated by technology to collect more data and provide even more value to the kids.
Thanks, Felix. Pam, you've been working at CSU Global on this for some time. What have you seen on the landscape?
Yeah, so CSU Global is, we started out as a fully online, 100% online university. And so I think we come at it from a very different perspective. I liked James's perspective on integrating the technology because we offer asynchronous online 8-week courses, but we really try to make that a grand experience for the student and really get them to engage outside of the classroom too. So being able to implement project-based work where they can interact with different companies and students in order to do that is really important, and really thinking about how do we make the learning environment the best for the learner. And so I think technology has come a long way, and we've really seen through COVID all of the different opportunities. You can integrate Zoom into the classroom. You can meet with your classmates in different little cafes and things like that. So I think it's really important that when we're thinking about the learner experience in that hybrid model, it really requires that intentional definition of what you're trying to do. And I think that it's also important that we're looking at it from the perspective of what do learners actually need within the classroom and what they're trying to accomplish. We always have coached and guided students to help them understand whether fully asynchronous online is for them, because it may not be, and really helping them to understand more about themselves and how they learn best and being able to integrate. I think one of the learnings that we've taken away being in the online environment is that starting out, no academic background, coming into just straight up online, doing it on your own in an asynchronous opportunity is really hard for a lot of students. And so that hybrid model comes in when they've had those experiences either at work, learning on the job, or learning in a classroom, maybe community college, and really bringing those experiences there and helping them integrate it into the work that they do.
Thanks, Pam. Ujjwal, I learned earlier that Ujjwal's company is 36 years old, which I just think is a stunning thing in the world of ed tech, and I've said that now twice to you, but it really has stuck with me. You're based in Hyderabad. Tell us a little bit about your definition of hybrid.
Thank you so much. So maybe I'll take 30 seconds to just explain the organization. It's 36 years old. We run 800 K-12 schools in India. We serve almost 1 million learners. We are aimed to be the largest education group in India by 2025 in terms of revenue, number of learners, and the locations. For us, the reason to go hybrid was that why should the learning stop at 3 p.m.? There's a time when the learners go back home. That's how the journey started. And to say that, how can you continue the learning? But as an education group, as K-12, our end goal is to provide the learner with a success. And success defined in K-12 for us is to help him get a good college, a professional education. Not literacy, not numeracy, but go beyond that and help him get good college. To do so, we wanted to see that how much effort is required on the digital side to track every student on data. How do we bring every week a dashboard for the teacher, for the learner, for the parent to help him know where he is and what is his aspiration. So for us, hybrid was a lot of data and learning continuing after 3 p.m. Thank you.
That's great, thanks. I won't go in order every time, but James, you mentioned HyFlex. And let me just add, just because I think it's worth taking a moment, how many of you have had experience with HyFlex, this teaching in the classroom and online simultaneously? And raise your other hand if it was just a wild success. Okay, yeah, it was like, I can't remember, was it Kim and Maloney, I'm blanking on their first names, who came up with this concept, but during the pandemic, right, or they named this thing. And so some of you have been working on this. Ujjwal, you guys were doing this in schools for some time, but then the pandemic comes along. James, a lot of people got in. Hybrid emerged as a concept somewhere in the pandemic in particular, I think. First under HyFlex, and then after that soured a little bit, it broadened in the way you've described it. From a pedagogical and educational perspective, we'll come to the business aspect in a moment. What do you see that is compelling? What can this do that really helps? And where can this go wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think HyFlex is a really interesting example because primarily it solves a problem that schools have, right? They have a teacher who's an expert on a subject. They have students who want to come to campus, and they might have some other students who don't want to or can't come to campus. And wouldn't it be great if we could sort of serve both of those audiences at the same time? So we'll just hook up a monitor in the classroom and hope for the best. Now, actually, I've had some experiences teaching HyFlex myself, and I've talked to people who have actually had it go really well. And one of the advantages of it is you can actually bring together very diverse audiences, which is interesting. But you know, I've had the benefit of working in an environment that approaches these kinds of problems with a lot of intention. And so we have a lot of expertise within Minerva to do that. And not everyone has that. So the support for faculty isn't always there. The appropriate technology isn't always there for the students, and so on. So the bar for execution of HyFlex is very, very high to do it well. And I think when you come at things from what's good for the students, then pretty quickly you start to see there have to be these different options. And it's not just about offering them flexibility, right? You know, it sounds good to offer students flexibility, but they also need guidance, right? They need to know, given that I have educational goal A and I have these constraints, what's the right path for me, right? Given where I am in my education and how fast I can move, and maybe I have to work a job. A lot of, you know, increasingly more and more students are working while they're learning and so on. So, and then, you know, what do we know about learning? What kinds of pedagogies, regardless of whether they're in a physical classroom or online, are actually gonna help them learn at the particular stage of education they're at. And I think when you approach it that way, rather than for flexibility or convenience or operational efficiency, that's when you start to get solutions that are a lot more effective.
I'm sorry, James, did you say we should approach this in terms of education? I mean, I like flexibility and convenience. Those are good things, but it is sort of bracing to have the educational, pedagogical part put forward, and I want to push on that a little bit. But if I can stay with the higher ed duo for a moment and come over to you, Pam, what have you seen beyond flexibility and convenience? Not that those are unimportant. What have you seen in terms of the educational value, and have you seen times where this is not working, either within a course or across an institution?
Yeah, I think for it to be done well, it has to be done, again, with intentionality. The pandemic really pushed everybody into this thinking of, oh no, we all have to go online now. And that's the best option for students. It gives them the flexibility. We're gonna get, not all students want online. Some students want that in-person experience with the students, or other students and their faculty. And so I think my advice and what I've seen is the universities who really focus in on what they do best are going to be the ones that really surpass and stay afloat in this environment, in this new landscape. Because if we're really good at in-person and we have all of our science labs and we do all that, and then we're like, okay, now we're gonna go and get the online population too and try to fold it in, I think you lose a little bit of that focus, and I think it creates a worse experience for students, because then they're like, all right, do I go online, do I go in person? I don't know how, and you have to have the guidance and the coaching and all of that. So it's not as easy as just taking the classroom and putting it online, and you really need to focus in on who do you serve, what is your audience, who is your target market for the students that you bring into your university, and what is it that they need. Convenience and flexibility is not always what somebody needs. Sometimes it's just what they want, and it would be really convenient if I could do that. But if they're only looking at it from a convenience perspective, how much motivation and drive are they gonna have to get it done on their own independently or within the classroom? So I think that it really does require universities taking that time to really think about who do they serve and what are they trying, what is the mission and how are we accomplishing that? And sometimes that means providing a hybrid model. Sometimes that means we need to have a lot more of our classes in person. And so that's the guidance and advice that I would give to universities looking at these different models.
Yeah, but remarkably hard to actually, all of us who work in universities know that actually making those distinctions, right, as opposed to do one thing or do another or do it all at once, actually making those distinctions is not so easy. Or if you work at a place where it is, then I'd like to speak with you. Felix, can you just talk a little bit about where this has really bolstered your educational mission and some of the problems that you see when you're trying to do these different modalities?
Yeah, like the convenience part is interesting. I mean, if you would tell your kids tomorrow, well, you can decide if you want to go to school or not go to school. Like, might be convenient for the kid to not go to school at all for the next couple of weeks, but if this is the best thing or not is a different story. But in our case, how we see it is the tutoring service and teaching in general depends solely on the teacher. The quality of education in our philosophy depends on the quality of the teacher. If they deliver a good job and they inspire children, then we have done a great job. And this is how we define success, pedagogical success of our service. Yes, for one kid this means you get a better grade, for the other kid it means you create a passion for mathematics or for languages, but getting teachers to inspire kids, that's the heart, that's the core of a high quality service in our sense. Like you raise your kids by inspiring them to do certain things. And when we talk about the format, the hybrid format, one more time, for us, whether we deliver this inspiration of kids in an online setting or pure offline setting or in a setting that combines these two things, for us, we don't care so much about that. We just want to get this inspiration piece to the kid. The interesting component, though, is when we look and we deliver about 1 million to 2 million tutoring sessions every month. So we have a lot of data on these teaching units. In the online world, we can collect much more data at the moment around the teaching service. That's why also our retention metrics, for example, for teachers in the online service are higher than for teachers who deliver the service offline, because we have more data available to see which teachers enjoy the service, which teachers we can nudge to stay longer on the platform. We have less of these capabilities in the offline setting. So by being able to combine these things and be also able to collect a lot of data in the offline teaching services, we can open this kind of black box, this Pandora's box, and finally really understand how can we put these engagement metrics higher, and how can we get great teachers into the classrooms.
Yeah, that's very helpful. The centrality of the teacher, if you lose it, that's the problem, but the data really can help you overall. That's a very clear message. Ujjwal, same question for you. Where has this worked well educationally, pedagogically, and where has it come a cropper? Where are the challenges?
Thank you. You know, we're talking about hybrid, and looks like hybrid is equivalent to online class. In our view, no. Hybrid has the whole learning pedagogy involved. So when the child is alone, what is he doing? If he needs assistance, how do you deal with it? In an online class, what else can we do? So we looked at all of this, and we had some amazing experience. When we first thought about going and helping them on self-learn, the world was talking about bite-sized learning, snacking of learning. And because we have a lot of learners, we'll do a 2-minute video and show it to them. They said, not interested. A 5-minute video, not interested. It says a concept we can easily understand in 10 to 15-minute video, which was so much antithesis than whatever was happening globally. And a 15-minute video was the highest viewership. We also did 1-hour videos to just check. And we realized that they have different needs at different points in time. So if I'm going for an exam today, I will watch a 1-hour video. But if I'm just trying to learn, I understand only acute angle which I want to learn. Give me a 7-8 minute or 10-minute video. I'm very happy to learn from that. Assessment was the biggest driver in all of this. It was just so difficult for a physical teacher to conduct so many assessments, get the data in, and doing all the analysis offline. Assessment actually enabled across hybrid for us. But the third thing which has helped a lot in building hybrid is the doubts feature. So I'm at home, 9:30 I'm solving a question, I'm unable to solve that question. Now, I can go on Google, search, I can get diverted to 100 other things, or I go to the app, I ask this question and say, can my teacher answer this? And the teacher can just solve it on a piece of paper, click a picture and send it to the student, even at 9:30 or 10 o'clock in the night. I think the continuity of learning and what it does is that builds hybrid much more. Online definitely is, we did try this hybrid flexible model. It didn't work for us at all because we were having few faculties who are trying to do this class when the students are inside and outside the class. It's very difficult to get attention of online students in an offline class. But what really worked for us is a good quality master teacher who was actually teaching from a studio or a location to a lot of other students. So you can distribute a good teacher to all the students, and because we have varied level of schools, affordable schools to high-paying students, it was just easy to bring the overall education level for everybody at a common place. So I think that's how we looked at pedagogical element in the hybrid learning.
So we've covered, in some ways, the most important dimension of this, which is the educational purpose to it and some of the challenges. But let's shift over to the business side of this. Pam, I'm a skeptical university president, and it's one new thing after another. And if I just close my eyes for 6 months, you'll probably, maybe it'll go away. Something else is going to come along. Even if I was convinced by the educational benefits, right? Even if I was convinced, and that itself is a question. But why do I want to invest in this? Why would I really want to do it? I mean, it sounds like I'm going to have to build up a whole new, first we built teaching and learning centers, then we built, digital and online capacity. Now we've got to do that in hybrid capacities. Do I really need to do this? Or is this a kind of nice to have if it happens to fit a particular reason? Why do this?
Well, I think it serves students. So I think, again, I mentioned this earlier, you really need to take a look at Who are you serving and what are their needs? And if you have that need, then it's definitely worth investing. But you might be skeptical, so what do you do about that? I think that the best line of action is to try it in a small capacity and see if it works for your students. Collect the feedback, do the research, figure out, does it really work for your students? And find out why they would want to engage in this type of learning environment. And if it works for your students, then you can invest heavily in that. I think if you go all in and then students don't like it, then you're jumping from idea to idea and then you get lost in that. So really focus in on what is going to best serve your students and your university. How are you going to support the mission of your university? That would be the advice that I would give, and always looking at the data and looking at assessing the learning. Are students really getting what they are paying for out of it? Because sometimes we think it's a great idea and it's so amazing and innovative and students are gonna love it, and that is not always the feedback that we get. And so being adaptable and agile enough to say, okay, this didn't work for this group of students. Maybe you try it with another group of students. Maybe there's a specific program or department where this learning is going to work the best, and it doesn't have to be across the entire university, but you have to find where it works best for the students that you serve.
So, James, on the higher education theme here, let me give you a slightly more specific version of my question that I gave for Pam. Let's say I'm president. I'll give you two examples. You can do either or both. I'm president of a mid-sized private university in the US, or I'm president of a university in the UAE, okay? And I want a more modern education, but I'm deeply committed to in-person. This is our bread and butter. This is what we believe in. I'm seeing a lot about online and digital. I'm not sure if I'm yet, I'm not sure if I'm building out my digital infrastructure to take over the world. I'm also really interested in experiential learning, right? I'm interested in all kinds of things, but I am nervous that that this is just too much investment, and my faculty won't stand for it. And whether it has good outcomes for the students or not, it's just not what we need. Why? Why should I take this on?
Yeah, I think it actually doesn't matter what kind of university you are, or even if you're in K-12. I think adoption of these approaches is existential, and for all but a very few number of institutions. And the reason for that is because of all of these trends that are converging in the world right now. You have demographic cliff, which is creating more competition between educational providers. You have obviously the increasing adoption of digital tools, not just in schools, but in the economy, right? I mean, AI is the sort of latest and greatest example of that. But our education has to evolve to prepare young people and really all of us for the way the world is evolving. And so, a lot of higher ed institutions, for example, need to be able to serve their alumni. Their alumni are really underserved right now. They can't actually find the learning that they need to develop in their professional careers or change jobs or change industries, what have you. And they don't necessarily have 2 years to get a master's degree, right, in order to learn something new. And they're not all gonna come back to campus. So all of these things together, I think, suggest that the universities and the other education providers that adopt approaches to, I loved the phrase continuity of learning, to create a continuity of learning for students throughout their lives, both when they're young and they need to figure out how to unlock the challenge they're having with their homework, to when they're in college and maybe need to pick up a job and have that flexibility but also still a good learning experience, to when they're alumni. And a lot of it has to do with creating some kind of experience that has consistency to it. There's so much fragmentation that happens when you just add options. And so you see a lot of providers adding some online courses over here. They're often run by a totally different unit because there isn't this intentional approach that's being taken. So what I would say to the president is, if you don't do it, your peers and competitors are going to do it. And the ones who do it well and are thoughtful about what happens to students as they change what kind of modality they're taking things in, as they get to a different place in their life and their career, and they have different needs, they're gonna vote with their feet and go towards education providers who are taking an intentional approach to this. And so, feel free to stick with what you've been doing, but we'll see how that works out for you.
Okay, I'll sign up. Felix, you're the CEO, so you don't have to convince the president. But you have investors, you have a board, and as you look into the future, you talked about making an acquisition in the last year. As you look into the future, what's the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity on that horizon for you from a hybrid perspective?
Yeah, actually it was very challenging to convince the investors on this hybrid strategy, and I give you a very easy financial reason to that. We as mentioned, we started as a pure online tutoring business, and we were growing like crazy in the first years, like 100% plus year on year consistently, country expansion, more than 20 countries in which we expanded. And then we looked into this one offline business that was growing 10% year on year, super stable business, cash flow positive business, but from the growth investors mindset, why on earth do you buy a business that is growing only 10% year on year? So you dilute your growth. Yes, you might get it for like a good price tag, but it kind of it is contrary to the growth story that you are telling. But the reality is, I mean, first and foremost, you cannot infinitely scale any online business because there's like certain limitation on your acquisition costs. You can't spend unlimited money on Facebook, Google, so there's like limits to that. So for us, it was also a way of diversifying our channels, how we get customers. So if you do an online business, you rely on performance marketing in the beginning, then you diversify channels, you rely on referrals, etc. In our offline business, in the centers, today, we generate about 45% of leads, so incoming requests from parents, via the centers directly. Why is that? Because the centers in the local neighborhoods represent an element of trust. And education, when you think about it, which education companies you know out there that are economically really, really successful, that generate lots of cash and they are like a successful business? They are all trusted, often offline institutions that started at some place. And they built this trust over years, sometimes decades. The one offline business we acquired started in the year 1974. So it's a trusted brand that built this trust over decades. And as an online business, you cannot build this trust in like 2 years, 3 years time, even if you spend 100, 200 millions on it. Like it doesn't work. So in my vision of it, I envision that in the future, you will see more online businesses that look out for this trusted brand that exists in a particular market, and they use their software and their online services to leverage the brand actually of it and offer their online services on top. Like we leveraged the German brand that we bought, we leveraged that brand, we didn't destroy that brand to accelerate selling our online products on top of it. And that is a really, really good business case and allows us also in a consolidated business to grow much and to also grow their business much faster than the 10% year on year. So that is how we look at it from a like pure business brand perspective.
I love this. I'm also convinced. That you start online, you pick up the brand prestige of the offline, which in the model you've got serves to build both out. Ujjwal, same question there. When you look out at the future, right? Not just post-pandemic, but 10 years out. Where do you see this going, and what's the biggest challenge you think you'll have to confront?
So, like Felix was talking about a credible brand, we are actually a brand which is maybe India's #1 brand when people think about a test preparation in India. And we almost like, if you know Indian education system, if in IITs, if there are 40,000 students who go through, 10,000 students or 25% of the students go from our institution. But the question was that, why should you invest? Why should you do? Today, this is hygiene. Like it or don't like it, if you don't provide it, you will be an archaic organization and you don't want to be there. You want to move along with the times. So for us, it is very, very important that how can we bring digital learning when people see us, they see us as a new age education. When our founders started, Dr. Rao and Dr. Jhansi Rao, when the founders started 36 years back, it was more one-to-one. But as the business has scaled so big, 50,000 teachers are working in different parts. How do you standardize that? You won't be able to standardize by saying that individual attention is important. How do you train them? How do you ensure that every child gets similar kind of learning? At least a basic hygiene is covered for everybody. And it can only happen through technology. So for us, it is more like remaining in the whole gamut of providing better education. But more important than that, it's a great business sense as well. Because parents do feel that they are ready to pay a little extra money if the education system provided meets their need. And in India particularly, parents have this big need to say, can my child go to a better college when they come out of that school system? Because the better college will lead to better chance of getting a job and the families move forward. I think that's the larger motto for which we work.
So we're at 4.5 minutes. So 1 minute each for any last comment, question, thought you want to leave us with, and we'll just run the line. James?
Sure. I want to reinforce something that Felix said, and maybe others mentioned it as well, which is the importance of data. I think that any strategy that you want to implement for hybrid learning at any level, you have to see how it works for the learners that you serve, for the teachers that are implementing it, for the kind of institution you have. And so going in from the very beginning with hypotheses rather than theses, testing them by actually getting both quantitative and qualitative feedback on what the experience is like for all the different stakeholders, including parents, and then refining and iterating your approach based on that, and knowing that you're going to do that from the beginning. Like, you're not going to execute it correctly the first time, guaranteed. I think not enough people take that approach. It's an afterthought. It's something like, the week before the program launches, like, oh, maybe we should do a survey at the end or something. You got to do more than that. And this is another area where technology can really help.
James, I'm just, because I'm watching the time.
Thanks.
Intentionality, including with regard to data. Felix, a minute.
I actually really want to reiterate that message. No, it's because education is a field where everyone is strongly opinionated. Everyone has such a strong and emotional opinion because each and every one of us went through years of like kindergarten, primary school, high school. Everybody knows what's best for their kids and for other kids. But as James said, let's really look at the data. Let's really try to get to the core of understanding why is it that some teachers are able to inspire children and bring them to a good path and bring them to better grades, inspire them about a topic, and let's use that to make the decisions and not just our gut feeling this might work for all the kids out there.
Pam?
Okay, I'm going to use the word intentional again, but I think that it is having a true strategy about it and not just doing it because everybody else is doing it. So what is going to work best for your university, for your school, for your students, and how do you implement it in a way where you can get the data and you can make sure that it's working, and going small and then building up would be my advice.
Ujjwal?
I'm going to reiterate, people think hybrid is online. No. Think about what are the 4 or 5 steps. For us, there are 4 things. When the children learn self, when they ask doubts, when you do an assessment, and the online class. Each one of them has a different nuances of hybrid. And if we don't solve them, then the learning pedagogy won't be solved. So if we can solve each one of them, I think we will get much better results than just online. Thank you.
That was very impressive. If I remember the thread, it's data informed, fit for the purpose of your institution and your students, and making sure that it's a whole strategy that is specific to not just an overarching, but granular enough to fit the particular needs there, which sounds like a recipe for all of what we try to do. Please join me in thanking this fabulous panel.